Thanks for staying with us. Now, management of UniBank Ghana has issued a statement disputing some claims made by Korle Teaching Hospital about a contract for revenue collection for the hospital. The Korle Teaching Hospital in a statement said it's terminated the contract with UniBank because the services provided by the bank had consistently not been satisfactory. It further stated the bank had failed to show up to bid for a new contract for the implementation of a revenue collection software. The bank, however, denies this, saying they were not informed of the opportunity to bid for the new software. My colleague, Manasseh Azuriawuni, joins me in the studio for more on this issue. Manasseh, thanks so much for coming. Now, first of all, let's inform viewers of the statements that were put out. What was contained? What do we know was contained in UniBank statement and the Korle statement?
Well, basically, like you said of the UniBank statement, it is trying to dispute what Korle is trying to put out. And the Korle Teaching Hospital really talked about, it did not dwell so much about the inefficiency of UniBank, but it talked about the fact that if you change, the system is changed. Now they have two banks doing separate collection, but they want an end-to-end system. And let me just explain.
And these two banks are Stanbic Bank and UniBank.
UniBank. And let me just explain that the banks were collecting the revenues in order to ensure that the officials of the hospital who were perceived to be tampering with the resources couldn't do that. But the officials still found a way of doing that. And in 2013, Joy News did the investigation, I did an investigation. And what we realized was that even before the patients or clients went to the bank to pay, some hospital staff at the accounts department had a way of under invoicing. So there was a case where someone had to pay 1,500 Ghana cedis to the hospital. The accounts officer told him to pay 700. So the bill was prepared and it amounted to 700. So he paid the 700 to the bank, took the receipt, paid additional 300 to this accounts officer without a receipt. So the hospital was shortchanged about half of what it was due. Now, what I'm told this end-to-end software intends to do is to ensure that wherever a service is provided, the billing is done automatically and it's recorded. So that one person does not have what it takes to sit somewhere and alter these figures. So that is what the hospital intends to do. And it is arguing that when this is done, it will help the hospital to save money from these revenue leakages. So when I read the statement by the Korle Teaching Hospital, it wasn't like an attack on the performance of UniBank, but it was trying to talk about the benefits and
try to explain the system they're trying to run.
And it did explain that it gave the two banks the opportunity to bid, but one of them did not show up on two separate occasions. I have requested for evidence, and the Korle Teaching Hospital has actually told me it would come out with the evidence. But I just want us to go through what brought this in the first place. You know, we have two banks now. Why did the hospital go for two banks? And I have a report here
because it's important to note, because if you look at the chronology of events, it was first just Merchants Bank, then it was just HFC, and then now it is the two banks. And what this happened, or how this happened, is very curious, Daniel. It talks about this report I'm talking about, says report by the 5 selected banks of presentation on proposal for on-site banking and e-payments. That's the Korle Teaching Hospital wanted a bank to do this. And the introduction is quite curious, that following the presentations by 9 banks on proposals for on-site banking and e-payments, the board of directors directed that the first 5 successful banks should be invited for further presentation to enable the panel select the most outstanding performing bank. It's not talking about banks. It talked about a bank. Now, this report shortlisted 5 the banks. It scored them, and this is what happened. Merchant Bank came first.
with 59.4 score, followed by GT Bank 58.7.
No, you said the first was Stanbic Bank, rather.
Stanbic Bank, sorry. Stanbic Bank came first, 59.4, followed by GT Bank 58.7. Universal Merchant Bank came third, 57.1. We have UniBank coming fourth, 55.4, and then GT Bank coming, GCB Bank, sorry, coming sixth with 48 points. So this is how it was scored. But the management of Korle, and there's a letter signed by the Chief Executive Officer then, Dr. Gilbert Buckle, and this was written to the Controller and Accountants General. And this letter is dated 14 September 2015. And this letter said they had shortlisted two banks, that is Stanbic Bank and UniBank.
Two banks.
The first on the list, and then the
fourth on the list.
The fourth on the list. Actually, the information we had was that they were looking for a bank, but in this case, they took two banks. So the question now will be, why were the second and third banks, that's Stanbic, no, the second is GT Bank and Universal Merchant Bank. They were ignored, and the hospital went for the fourth bank in addition to the first. Now, if you read what the letter sent to the Controller and Accountants General Department, it gave some reasons. The 5 banks were shortlisted at the end of this stage to have matched up to the set criteria. The banks were further assessed in terms of cash management and social corporate responsibility, and in particular, past support to the Korle Teaching Hospital. So the question is, are you looking for competence on all those that have supported the hospital in the past? And if someone undertakes corporate social responsibility, does that guarantee them contracts, even if more competent entities come up to bid for this contract? But that was not the end of the story. We also have a response from the Controller and Accountants General's Department back to Korle on these two banks. That's the Stanbic Bank and also the UniBank. Let's look at the comments they passed. On Stanbic Bank, this is what the Controller and Accountants General's Department said. The Stanbic Bank has never participated in the Controller and Accountant General's on-site banking daily collection program. The bank therefore has no track record on its performance in this area. That is all that is said about Stanbic Bank. Now let's go to what is said about UniBank. The UniBank has not performed very well in their operations at the Ridge Hospital and the Police Hospital. 2, there are still issues with reconciliation, delays in transfer of the funds to the designated bank accounts of the hospital. 3, non-provision of real-time access to relevant stakeholders. And there's also a 4th point about why the Controller and Accountant General's Department thought there were issues with UniBank. Then the 4th one is non-submission of daily, weekly, and monthly reports to relevant stakeholders. So all these issues or concerns were leveled against the selection of UniBank, which was 4 on the list. So the Controller and Accountant General Department goes on to say that we, however, wish to recommend additional banks for your consideration as follows. Universal Merchant Bank Ghana Limited, which actually came third in their own assessment. EcoBank Ghana Limited, Fidelity Bank Ghana Limited, Prudential Bank Ghana Limited, Zenith Bank Ghana Limited, and we have UT Bank Ghana Limited. So upon all of these, the Korle Teaching Hospital still went ahead and picked UniBank and
Stanbic Bank. The big question now is why? Why pick two banks? Why pick a bank? And both of these banks were against the advice of the controller. Manasseh, let's quickly leapfrog to 2017, where we understand a new revenue collection software was being bid for, actually in 2016, and a contract was rescinded in 2017. In about a minute, let's have a wrap of that.
What is really happening is that the management of the Korle Teaching Hospital is saying that it is not necessary to have these two banks at the hospital. And the reason is that you want one system to operate. And if you go, the hospital has been divided into various sections and given to these banks to run. So if one bank is perhaps taking care of the emergency unit, collection there, and another bank is perhaps taking care of the maternity ward, there are times one patient can go through 2 different units at the same time before they leave. So if someone rushes in, maybe a pregnant woman is brought in, it is an emergency situation, they are taken to the emergency unit. If she is stabilized, she's taken from the emergency unit to perhaps the maternity ward. And sometimes someone can be taken from the emergency unit to, let's say, male ward or female ward. So a lot of things happen. So when you have 2 banks operating, it creates a lot of problems. Besides, you want the end-to-end service so that wherever you go, there is a uniform software that no matter which department or unit you find yourself, when service is rendered, the charge is logged onto the system. So you don't have one person controlling or trying to manipulate all of this. And the hospital is arguing that this was an addition it was requesting. So it just gave the 2 banks the opportunity to come and do presentation. And on 2 occasions, Stanbic Bank showed up to do a presentation, but UniBank did not. This is what UniBank is contesting, and we'll follow up and try to get evidence or the lack of it for this claim. And the hospital is arguing that this thing started last year. And in June, when the current CEO was actually appointed, the pilot program for the end-to-end management software was supposed to have started. So it wasn't a case where this particular CEO had to come and change everything. This is something that began long before he was appointed. So this is where we are.
Right. Thank you. But of course, UniBank is also contesting that bit of the statement where it said that all these decisions took place before the current CEO came in. They are, of course, making the point that the decision to rescind, for instance, was done around June, where the CEO was already in office. So thank you, Manasseh Azuriawoni, for those details of the current situation. And of course, we'll be following up to find out the details about that bit that UniBank is contesting with the hospital. You need to stay tuned to Joy News for all those details.